Okay, so virtual Tina, I'm excited and happy Monday. We're off to a good start. Virtual, hopefully you can all see me and hear me good. Matthew, we have a thumbs up on the audio. Good?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, super. So let's just talk a little bit about what our agenda is going to look like this morning, a little bit about where we came from and what today's class is, and then something about handouts. I always put that on there. When we're doing something virtual, we go through exercises and pretend that we were going to hand something out as if we were at the conference. And then virtually, we want to make sure you get those handouts. So I'm going to show them to you as we go forward today. And you might want to just take a minute while I'm introducing myself and grab a pen and a piece of paper. Some of the exercises you can walk yourself through while we're talking, and I'll be showing you the handouts linked in your digital guide. And then also I popped up my email address here if you guys want to address anything specifically, if you want me to shoot you an email, if you want more information. We're actually going to take this schedule, which Maureen and I, that was 3 Maureens. I've never had that many on one conference call at a time, but there's 2 in our office and 1 in yours. So we put together a full day of classes. When we flip that to virtual, we compartmentalize. So I'm going to run through a class today that's actually a couple of hours. In about 45, 50 minutes, I set a timer so that we can do questions at the end. Matthew's going to be taking a look at the chat. While I'm presenting, I won't see all of the chat, but I'll stop at the end and get a feel for if there's anything specifically that I can address. Okay, so first of all, dispatch isn't the same as it used to be. This picture is actually from 1968, and this picture is from a couple years ago. And today we're going to talk a little bit about what to prepare yourself for unexpected change, expected change, and walking through just some of the technology and pieces and people that this industry has gone through from 1968 until now. The first 911 call in 1968 had a different type of role: administrator support, administrator assistance, and also in the pecking order of things, possibly not in the stature of all the first responders out in the field. And then in some manner and fashion, the industry grew up in a way that the role was minimized. And if you look at today, especially in this picture on the lower right, you have more monitors, more technology, more knowledge, more requirements, more education, more training. And when I first started teaching technology, like 1996, we were moving from manual phone sets to digital and computer telephony. It was pretty exciting, actually. And then I got hit by dispatcher in training, and I thought you guys might be a little bit tense. And also, where did all the anger and tension come from? I had one lady take a mouse and pick it up and throw it across the room because all she had ever worked on was a keyboard. I thought the technology was exciting, and I realized probably right around 1998 that it wasn't that exciting for folks learning it, understanding the tensions around the sheer nature of making a mistake, dispatching to the wrong address, hitting a keyboard key that would normally open something up in your CAD, and then suddenly hang up on the phone that you used to pick up the handset. Actually, I saw somebody hit somebody with the handset once, and I thought, where is all of this tension coming from? And then also some really fantastic experience in the industry. Folks that have been around 10, 15, 20 years. I don't know if you've all read your digital guide. I actually met Betty, and it broke my heart when I saw her on your memorable page. And then I saw Rashida, and how early to lose somebody so young and coming into this career, willing to give us energy and excitement, and to lose her life on the way home from a night shift. So when we think through all the things that go on in our worlds, preparing yourself for things that are going to happen, that you know a CAD upgrade's coming or a technology upgrade, but then the things that you don't know and that you're not prepared for, how do you get ready for that? So I started to study it, probably because I got hit and I was kind of curious. And then two, I wanted to learn more about what we were doing to people, and watching somebody point and click the remote control, like it up here, the mouse, like it was a remote control. And then having this lovely lady, very experienced, put it back down and worry about it. And then someone young sitting next door saying, hey, I can left click, right click, and no clicks at all. And watch the difference in tensions between people, because the lady picking it up was a supervisor, and the one clicking and all done was someone working for her, much younger. So also the tensions between different age groups and how we were raised, and what's happening in learning the technology. So expected versus unexpected. And I always love that, because it's a conundrum and a bit of an argument on how do you prepare for something that's not expected. Because of the role that you are in, you do expect certain things to surprise you. And that's what we're going to talk about today, but we're going to do it in two different categories. The first one is what comes into our world that is a catalyst to change. Implementations, technology upgrades, CAD, radio. Sometimes you're pulling together different agencies into the same room. Sometimes you're consolidating. What's happening in today's world more often than not, rules about the cell phone, right? There's rules about the cell phone out on the floor, dress codes coming out, social media policies, things that didn't happen in 1968. And then also such a great attention to this role that's the first responder, and how important it is, and all the things that you know now as an integral person in a role of working and serving your community. And where you were once maybe not noticed, now everyone's noticing how important. There's actually even a couple of TV shows now bringing awareness to your role. That doesn't change the fact that the change and the technology and the pieces coming towards you aren't any less important than before. So you do need to look at crisis as something that's going to change tomorrow or even the next few minutes. You do need to look at promotions, whether it's your promotion or someone sitting next to you getting promoted, whether you thought you should have been promoted and now you feel passed over. There's staffing retention issues. There's staffing retention issues with people leaving. Tomorrow, is it tomorrow? Okay, so the schedule, let's take a look at the schedule. Saving yourself while we're saving others. Tomorrow we'll talk about you. Wednesday, we talk about the Incredibles, millennials, high performing. So I won't steal the thunder for Wednesday, but staffing retention does have some statistics behind it and some energy. And if you get that piece figured out, that's just a little teaser for Wednesday, how amazing it can be to integrate some of these age groups. I'm an old dog, so, and I have the younger folks working for me and with me and around me. So I'm always willing to learn something new in that world. Then you have the policies, you have consolidation. There's just things coming in, and those are called catalysts. That's what's going to spark something that happens, and that's what's going to spark how you react and respond to it. So why is it so difficult for individuals to work through something? Is because we prefer stability, we prefer stabilization in relationships and schedules. Sometimes we are really wired for regulation. We cling to what's familiar, and we kind of get after that. We drive the same place, the same route to work quite often. Top stressors in life, also you might think about being exciting, but it is a stressor. So even when it's positive, a promotion, a transition to a different role, or transition to a different home, weddings, those kinds of things, even when they're positive, can promote a catalyst to change. And it does come with some new things, which is fearful. It does come with some retaliation. If you are promoted and all of a sudden you're a supervisor over some of your friends, and now one of them's constantly tardy to work, How are you going to address that? It's a difficult conversation. So there's some things that come with change in when you upset the stability of something, dealing with the individual and the apprehension around that. Such an important piece. Now, it might be surprising that somebody hit me. Now, all these years later, being an old dog, I'm not surprised. But I am interested in what caused that. And what happens is when you do go through technology change and you interrupt somebody's world and you require them to do something, we don't, as a group of industry decision makers, necessarily address the fear of one person trying to figure that out. And that fear can be related to job responsibility, not somebody whining and complaining about a new CAD system, but someone that has responsibility and acknowledgement that they don't want to make a mistake and they're going to try so hard. So when you think through that wired for regulation piece, does a vendor come in and get your people ready and motivated to adopt a software, or do they come in and train you on how to use it? That's two different types of individual addressing of a catalyst or a change. When you are wired for regulation, and you go from 8-hour shift to 10-hour shift, or 12-hour shift to 8-hour shift, or 10 to 12, and then you go back to 8. These are all real life examples. And you move people around like that. How do they manage their family life? 48% of stress in your personnel group is related to juggling personal life with shift life. 48% is juggling that shift with their personal life and all the people involved in that: children, spouse, boss, teammates, school, remote learning, all the things that are going on. That's the juggle, 48%. Now you bring a new person into that. Woohoo, excellent, butt in the seat. Well, okay, so you teach them how to use the CAD system, and you teach them how to use the radio, and then how to find their locker and get in and figure out all the policies and wear the right collared shirt under the dress code. And you pull all those pieces together. All right, that sounds good. 48% of their stress is going to be juggling that shift with their personal life. And how many times we come into an environment like that and say, did we train them on time management? Was our health and wellness program, when we presented it to them, more than a PowerPoint? Are we repeating things that'll help them get good rest for the mind and the body? And are we helping them figure out how to eat when they have to go 12 hours? Are we figuring out how to help them stand up, right, and sit down in a position where they're going to be sitting for many hours at a time? So when we think about that management of the humans and the individuals sitting there, the 48% of juggling that, especially in that younger group, when we think about work-life balance. And sometimes traditionals, my age group, we don't necessarily think about work-life balance as a super high priority, although we probably should. So the catalyst, right? We all approach it with some commonality in our underlying factors. When you think about the majority of humans coming into your workplace and yourself, you really do strive to have a good relationship with your best friend, your spouse, your boss. Even if your boss isn't the most fantastic person on your list of coolness, there are the need to have those relationships fostering bonds of trust, because inherently the role that you're in requires you all to trust each other when the shift hits the fan. I said shift. And when we think about that, the relationships don't have to be friendly. They do have to be strong. And in that workplace, you're fostering bonds of trust, much like when you have the fire chief and then you have lieutenants and captains and then all the folks in their pecking order and how they come together. They're always practicing response. And when we think about helping a team like that run into a fire, when the shift hits the fan, you're going to be pulling together and fostering bonds of trust with your daily activity with which to address a big crisis or a big scene or a big something. even a little something can be big to an individual. If it has a child involved, then that person has a child. The relatable incident and the things that happen when you're looking at your underlying factors don't have to be a huge CNN event or a huge news event. They do sometimes impact a person, and it's a big event to that person, even if it's not impacting the whole team. So those strong relationships, a safe environment, most of you actually do want a good reputation, even though if we took your phone and said, can we read all your texts? You might be embarrassed by some of the things you're willing to say about each other. Unfortunately, that can really destroy some of the morale as you're kind of going through anything that looks like a planned event or an unplanned event. So that's why some of these underlying factors are linked. If you're not building a good reputation with your peers, it does affect your relationships, and it does affect your unity, and it does affect your ability to feel safe coming and going. So those are the types of things that come into the workplace, different age groups, different upbringings, different cultures, different generations, different needs, different personal experiences, also different educations. So as you go forward, you have this complexities coming in, but it doesn't change the fact that whenever you do change something, positive or negative, you will upset the status quo. So how people react and respond are based on their experiences. Now, this chart shows you that if I come in and upset the status quo, I've got what? Shock and denial, right? And I've got disruption, anger, fear, and I'm coming down, and you'll notice the impact line that I'm down into negativity. And then I'm going to start thinking about acceptance. I'm going to start rebuilding. Maybe I'm going to be even forced to do it. I'm going to learn this new CAD if I want to work here. You'll notice too that if they do a dress code or anything that looks like wearing a new uniform, you might have commitment because they're wearing it when they come to work. Now, how long we stay in this dip and whether this uptick into positivity is forced or not forced is where we start figuring out the impact on the humans at work. People can quit in this dip. People can fight. Notice that it says anger and fear. You really can have some issues there if you don't have a supervisor and a management group that's well trained in difficult conversations and pulling out of this. It is, by the way, well trained or not, you cannot expect that this dip will not ever happen. It does happen. It's just how long we stay. Can you imagine if these two quadrants was a couple of days, or if it was a couple of months and you stay down here in 6 months trying to adopt a new CAD system or a new uniform? So how long we stay and how far we dip into that fear and acceptance and exploration and that disruption, how long we stay in there is often based on the way that we pull ourselves back out. As leadership and management, the practice and the art of today's conversations being character-based, based on respect and accountability and responsibility, going two ways. Those types of skills are much different in a coaching and encouragement environment than discipline and writing up. So as the tides turn in technology and humans, so does the way we talk to each other. And remove some of the intimidation, the aggressiveness, and the demanding, and some of the things that we used to do. I just spent some time coaching a really nice, fantastic trainer, 30 years in the industry. And I said, hey, buddy, did you push her? No, Mo, I did not push her. Okay, well, did you push the chair she was in? Yes. Did the chair go flying? Yes. Did she cry? Yes. You probably can't do that today. And you might have done it in 1968 or 30 years ago, but you can't do it today. And so the people, the expectations, the professionalism has changed, just like our technology and our shirts and our uniforms. So that disruption, anger, fear, exploration, acceptance, the art of pulling into positivity is going to be a lot of how we interact on that daily activity. Now, we're not going to spend a ton of time on this slide, but I am just going to tell you what happens when you have crisis scenarios, when you have unexpected events happening to people and agencies, and even agencies that are neighboring agencies, what folks go through. You will have increased tensions, distractions, you'll have behavior, somebody that normally behaves is suddenly swearing up a storm. You will also have some very increased defensive posturing. And partly because as a group, we're not really supposed to be making mistakes. We're not really supposed to be working through things and doing, little typos here and there. And it's in our nature to defend ourselves with what happened. We also get hurt feelings, miscommunications. You can't hear a lot of things. People get into a zone, and you'll definitely have misunderstandings. Now, what happens if we don't pull out of restoration very well, and we don't prepare for something like this individually or as a team? You culminate poor behavior into intimidation, mean looks, poking at each other, making fun of each other, accusing each other. And in today's world, that can be labeled bullying. There's lots of things happening on text, social media, face-to-face, and it might have been okay for this trainer to shove someone earlier in the years and type and move them over and get on the keyboard and get after it. But in today's world, to shove a brand new person working for you that's 22 years old would get you landed into physical pushing and into a chair where you're discussing how you don't shove people in a chair and send them flying across the room. So those labels and those types of unprofessional behaviors are caused by the way that we react and respond to any type of crisis scenario or a catalyst to change, just our fear of getting ready for something, and then our coping skills that we come together after. So that's a lot for us to all be going through, learning something, and then the next thing's happening to us or the person next to us or our entire agency. So what do we do about it? There's a few exercises here, and we've got about half an hour left, and I'm going to walk through some things that you can do. This, if we delivered this type of training on site, it's actually a 4-hour class if we pull all your leadership together and walk through something specific like a social media policy or removing the cell phones off of the floor. We're going to walk through a few of the tips that you can do for it individually, but also as a group. First, you need to take a look at your ongoing behavior. If you're going to prepare for expected or unexpected, you really do need to walk into your center or into your training class, into your mandatory overtime or mandatory on call. If we call you have to come in because someone called out. There's short staffing everywhere. I just talked to an agency yesterday. They should have 25 people and they have 17, and they're not allowed to take days off. And so there's lots of issues with how we arrive because we're exhausted so much. But how do you go from 0 to 60 in a matter of seconds and then be able to hold it for hours? So that's preparing yourself to be able to come in and manage that. So if you come in and your tanks are empty and you're tired or hungover or over caffeinated, you're not going to be able to hold it for hours. So whether you want to prepare for that new CAD system coming in or not, or you think today is going to be like every other day and you come in dragging your feet, maybe you've done 4 12-hour shifts in a row, then how are we going to hold it for hours going from 0 to 60 in a matter of seconds? And that day could be your 5th day of 12 hours shifts. That's a big deal. That's 60 hours in so many hours, 5 times 12. I had to get my calculator out. And we think about what are you going to be like on hour 58? And therein lies, you don't have a choice, but you can't approach it exhausted. And so you're going to need to change the way you're moving and sitting and eating and sleeping as soon as you start getting into day 3, 4, and 5. And take good care of yourself the best way that you can. so that in hour 58, you don't do something egregious that makes you wish you hadn't had that second beer or third glass of wine. So those distractions, those over caffeinated things, that all causes muddled thinking, and it starts working on your brain, and it's really hard to fire on all cylinders when you're over caffeinated and super tired. So you have to work on those pieces individually when you put your butt in the seat. The other thing is when you do come through something that is stressful for your agency, stressful for yourself, if you're working on personal, something going on, there's a lot of relationship strife in this particular type of industry. Sometimes we have divorce, we have kids. And by the way, it's not only folks answering 911, it's all the people that support it. I think I normally travel 40 weeks a year coming out and working in agencies and coaching and helping for officer safety and dispatcher stress and peer support programs. And how can you feel good about what you're going through? And now I've been home on the ground trying to run the show at my house since March 13th. And my husband's like, so back to those 40 weeks a year where you were gone and I was running the house. And you add on top of that remote learning and 3 boys under our feet constantly 24/7. And you bring that into your work environments and all of the things going on. So aftercare is not something that you do once in a while. It's a lot like showering. If you don't do it daily, you get stinky. So you do need to think about communicating. We sometimes are in this industry where we're like, ooh, super important and heroes. That's awesome, by the way. And so strong we are in trying to fix things and power through it, and I can get through it. But we do need help sometimes to figure some of these things out. And communicating and rest, those are hard things to do. And when we think about peer support, being able to have a confidential conversation that gives us productivity and something to do and action plans and a foot forward, you have to kind of think that if you're treading water and the water's deep and you need a lifeline and you want to grab a rope, that rope better be strong. It better pull you back up onto the boat and save you from that ongoing treading and doggy paddle. And think about grabbing onto that and having somebody help you when you need it the most. But if you haven't developed those communication paths when you do need it, and you're trying to do aftercare and get ready to come and do it another day, and that lifeline is weak, you have a hard time getting help. So when we think through that, muddled thinking and something happening, you're going to think through, how could I have done it better? How can I have done it differently? I often talk to folks that replay that call, what could I have said differently? You want to turn that into helping the next person, and you want to turn that into a stepping stone. And what did you learn from it? And I got divorced. What did you learn from it? So that you start putting yourself forward instead of wallowing it. This is an exercise that we do on site. I'm just going to give you a second to take a look at it. We would typically hand this out. This is one of the 3 handouts in this session today that you can download or email me. And this is a great thing, by the way, if you're a supervisor, to walk your team through once in a while and get a feel for where they're at. You'll notice here on this screen that I popped up health and wellness on one side and stress management on the other. These 2 tanks are really important to treat separately. They cannot be empty on a regular basis. What did we have for breakfast? What did we have for dinner last night? How much sleep did we get? What did you do 30 minutes before you went to sleep? And when you think through, are those things going to help you go from 0 to 60 and sustain it for hours? You kind of know the answer to that. And how can we help each other do that just a little bit differently to give us the energy to keep going, and also the clarity of mind. Sometimes we don't realize what food does to our thinking. our anxieties, our irritabilities, and then our sitting and how that exacerbates migraines, weight gain, premature aging, muddled thinking, irritability, tensions, high blood pressure. And then when you look on the right-hand side of this sheet, stress management. When we look at and pull this exercise in from groups of folks, it is, unless you're a manager, it is very rare for me to read the top three being related to the job. Sometimes it's who's going to walk my dog, who's going to watch my kids, who's going to pick up my kids if someone calls in sick and I have to work 18 hours straight. By the way, I just worked with an agency that works 12-hour shifts, and if someone calls in sick, they have to work 18 hours straight. And the stressors here sometimes look like my weight, my promotion. But if you give this sheet to all the managers and the directors, you often get a list of things that they're dealing with their staffing. So the different types of stressors coming into your work shift or your class today, those all play differently depending upon what role you play and what you're carrying in to get ready to do your shift. Do you have a hobby? Do you give yourself permission to play and go fishing or color? We often hand out coloring books. As a matter of fact, I have a coloring book with swear words. And let me tell you, the markers and the fun that goes with that when we're working through just restorative, calm things that give your mind the ability to rest and heal. And I often use the example, and for those of you that have been in my classes before, if you walked around with a broken arm, people might talk to you about that. And they might say, hey, look, your arm's broken. You should probably stop your super important day, roll over to the doctor, get it casted, super hot pink, and have everyone sign it. And that's pretty easy because it's obvious, walking around flapping your broken arm around. Also super painful. And you would want to stop that and you'd want to figure it out. And when we break heart, mind, and spirit, not so easy to notice, not so easy to be obvious about getting it casted and fixed, and nobody wants to sign that. It's awkward. And when we think through, how do we heal that? Well, I'm tough, and you still need to heal it. You can be as tough as you want and go do a Tough Mudder, but still when you break your arm, you're going to get it casted. So hobbies also prescribed to cancer patients because it releases cytokines into your blood flow that help you heal and relax from the stress that takes a toll on your body and your brain. Like your brain takes a beating. When do you schedule this? You don't have to be suddenly doing your hobbies 5 days a week, but you can schedule it. If you're cooking, you can cook the third Thursday of every month and bring the food in for everybody and share it. It's a really fantastic feeling to be able to find something, schedule it. And also for all of you in my own age group, you can call it me time and feel guilty, but you should not. Me time, by the way, getting your nails done is not necessarily healing. So you do need to find ways where you're taking good care of yourself. And sometimes now I have a lot of friends in the industry having grown up in it and been around doing this kind of work with you since 1994. And some of you are starting to figure out how important it is to take good care of yourself so that you can be ready for any kind of change that comes your way, the surprised, the expected, and the unexpected. Okay, so, later there's a group handout. I'll walk you through that. Once we start figuring out ourselves, we want to start helping each other. There's going to be a person next to us that hasn't quite got it figured out. They haven't showered in 3 days and we don't like them that much. But remember, the idea is to foster bonds of trust so that you can all deal with it together when the shift hits the fan. And they're going to tell you they're tough, they don't need help, or they don't have enough time. And those are all areas that you get to help each other out. Those are all areas that should not be ignored. I went to an agency and a young man lined up in class with 4 monsters, and therein lies somebody that needs help. You cannot come in having worked 24 hours straight and then learn something and then answer the phone. So some things like that do need to be addressed, and helping each other. Sometimes they don't even know how, millennials are pretty high performing and also stereotypes, sometimes unnecessarily. And also come at life with a little work-life balance insistence, and that's pretty fantastic, except that in a shift life, that's going to be hard if you don't create some flexibilities. So we do want to work on feedback. We do want to work on training, on time management. They might not have all the materials available to them. They might lack recognition. You know, in the traditional age group, people really do need feedback, and they do need to say, job well done. And when we do our QA, when we listen to calls and provide QA back to agencies, sometimes my evaluators call, I couldn't find anything good on this one. Yes, they arrived and they answered the phone, and we're going to start with thank you for arriving. You did really good getting their name and phone number. You do have to find the good that they do, and then corrective maneuvers, and then the good that they do in order to create that encouragement and that coaching. If all you do is point out their mistakes, then they're going to rise to the occasion of always having mistakes. So going forward, that recognition, even if you don't like it and you don't want to do it, is one of the ways for you to help them heal and move forward and come back, and at least be grateful that they do come back and be part of that coming back. And it's important that you understand, and I think I shared in tomorrow's class, that 67% of new hires quitting today have worked 3 years or less. That's a tough number. So we want to talk also on Wednesday about career path and attitude, and how do we all work together being in different age groups and different types of expectations. So it's a lot like the Pirates Code. We have guidelines. Guidelines give us readiness. You foster open-mindedness. You develop relationships and trust. There's a little extra handout. If you guys want to learn some character-based communications, there are some definitions on respect and accountability and faith and responsibility. And there's one, tardiness. It'll come to me. When we think through how to talk to somebody about being late, or when we talk to somebody about having respect or hospitality or generosity or decisiveness, there's a whole character communications and definitions around the words to use when you're encouraging and you're coaching somebody. So I guess that makes 4 handouts today. And you guys should shoot me an email, because it's a really fantastic way to change the way that you use your words in a way that you're helping folks be useful, truthful, kind, and then teach character and good judgment in your difficult conversations. Okay, so we talked a little bit about unexpected, but when we talk about coming in and saying a vendor's going to do an upgrade, or they're going to do something cool like text to 901, or you're going to switch everything over to EZNet and it didn't work, you had to back down and try it again. And why that just happened last week to a friend of mine. And we think through, how do we get people ready for that? And change management isn't often something agencies spend money on. It's not often areas that vendors come in and get you ready for. Actually, it can also be a swear word. So when you think through what it actually is, it's a structured approach for ensuring changes are thoroughly and smoothly implemented. And then we all laugh because, to be honest with you, smooth implementations are hard to come by. We should first agree that it's not going to go according to plan and act according to that. So remember I said, come in, interrupt them, status quo, shock and denial, and then we get into anger and fear. All right, well, if we manage it, look at what can happen. You have the opportunity now to take managed change, and look at the dip. The dip is so short, and it's not as long as unmanaged change. It doesn't mean it goes away, but if this was a week, you've just cut it in half. If this was a year, you've cut it in half. If this was a couple of days, the benefit that your people would get when you accelerate and do positive conversations and pull them out of it is exponentially different than everybody reacting, responding, and complaining, and then hanging in that negativity. It can be expensive, by the way, and it looks a lot like refresher training sometimes from your vendors if people don't start figuring it out. It also can look like a punch list. of items and user errors showing up as glitches in the software. And in fact, you have a lot of individual apprehension, people just trying to learn it. Change agents. So let's find some change agents. These are the kinds of folks that create ownership and encourage involvement. These are also people that communicate and will help you assess your culture, your impact. I can come into a room, by the way, and go through a couple of exercises and tell you who's preparing for the unexpected and who is not your change agents. Now, do you ostracize somebody that's negative from the process? No. But you want to put that person next to somebody positive, and you do want to have some influences on them, because it's not necessarily a problem. It can be the attitude around a problem that can make it good or not so good. So when we think through, sometimes your most negative Nellie and your last minute Lucy, they are the ones that you want participating in some of these conversations, because therein lies you solving problems that you can see coming, because they're going to tell you. Okay, so what do we do as a group when we're preparing for something expected, like a technology or policy change? You first call it a working group. That's much better than a committee, by the way, because we're going to get work done. And you can't decide things by committee. A working group, though, does have a team lead, not necessarily the boss. And it has a purpose. You can't have a working group around, what flavor of ice cream we're going to do today. It might be a team lead around health and wellness. It might be a purpose of we're thinking about removing the cell phones off the floor. And it's a good thing you're all muted, because half of you just went, oh, I couldn't live without my phone. Yeah, well, when it gets subpoenaed, you'll live without it for a while. So get a new one. There's definitely some policies and changes going on in the industry that cause a little bit of this, and then the argument begins. So that's why the team lead, the purpose, structured goals, how we're going to communicate in this working group, training, is it required, and messaging. Okay, so what's messaging? I got a handout for you. And then also working groups. Here's some team challenges that we've done working groups with just this year, by the way. These are not old. These are all relevant and new and ongoing. Upgrades, health and wellness, communications, staffing retention, text to 911, social media policies. Can you believe, oh, I spelled that word wrong. Can you believe someone's going to post the sheriff is a moron and consider it free speech? Yes. Also, that impacts your career path. So thou shalt not do that. Unless, of course, you don't want to work there anymore, and then you just ripped that cord. Okay, so here is a handout, messaging. It will not go according to plan. When we do pull together a working group and we are all together and I'm facilitating an exercise on, we shall remove the cell phones off the floor. Okay, well, we haven't done it yet. So the first thing we do is tell everyone, please don't run around and spread rumors because the argument begins. And then you start working through the pros and cons. And this exercise allows for you to say, if we did it, what's the pros and cons of it? In this working group, what do we think? And then if we were to agree, okay, the reason that we're going to do this is because this, and this, and it has to be benefits that don't look like, if we don't do this, you'll get fired. If we don't do this, we'll get written up. It has to be, if we remove cell phones from the floor, we will be 100% present, less distracted. And then if anything's happening where someone is distracted, there's an intent to sue and the attorneys subpoena all of our phones, then our private stuff stays private because our phone was in the locker and it wasn't the reason that we were distracted. So as we kind of work through some of the pros and cons, the reason that we have 3 here is because you're going to have someone that gives you 27 reasons why it won't work. And then the meeting goes sideways. And the other reason that we have 3 here is because you're going to have someone that loves the idea and gives you 27 reasons why they're going to shove it down your throat. So you have to balance the pros and cons, and the idea is that everybody is heard and understood. And then the consequence sentence puts every supervisor on the same page. If you do make a decision to change your policy, then if we don't do this, here's what happens. And if we don't do this, Here's the consequences to our team. And that sentence is also called, how do we get buy-in from the group and start managing the resistance? It does not make resistance go away. What it does is create consistency in your messaging. That's why it's called messaging. One of the number one complaints in the top 3 is inconsistent messaging from management, all the way down from management through the supervisor layer, which takes a beating because they have to message down to the floor as if these people are down there. And then retaliation, look what you're doing to us instead of for us. And that supervisor layer takes a beating, and then we become inconsistent. Oh, I don't like it any more than you do. And that's not good messaging. Or you have to do this or you'll be fired. Also not good messaging. So when you go through this exercise, and also if you need help going through this exercise, you can always give me a shout. The idea is that you're working through people feeling involved. That helps with the individual apprehension and getting ready. Once they're involved, you start to understand the problems that you can solve as you're overcoming this policy change or this CAD upgrade or the ridiculousness that you're going to hear. I can't wear polyester. Dude, you're wearing it right now, but this one doesn't itch. So you start overcoming some of those things before you roll it out. By the way, I did this messaging exercise with an agency that was going to roll something out on Monday, and they had me in on Thursday. The timing of that was way too tight. I recommended they pause. Their change was significantly huge, and we waited 3 months before they did the thing they were going to do. You have to plan ahead and take care of the people that are going to go through whatever it is you're intending to do. Hey, there's my little alarm. Okay, so we just have a couple minutes left, and I'm going to pause this. Cancel. Okay, and walk you through the last little exercise. This is also a handout, and then we'll have about 10 minutes for questions, and I'm going to figure out if I can hear the question or read it. This is an exercise you can do as a group to work on readiness, individual readiness. There's some cheat sheets on the right-hand side, some guidelines to keep your working groups professional and productive if you're working on solving a group goal. And if you look at the bottom right of this cheat sheet, the other thing it does is guide you through the training questions in order to address how you manage this. Sometimes I talk to folks about how they did training on a policy and they said they emailed everybody the policy and required them to read it. They still misunderstood the dress code, and they still misunderstood what kind of skirt they could wear, what kind of shirt had a collar. So you do need to think about why is the training important, how often will it be delivered, how will it be delivered, and how will that result in the least amount of dip into that negativity as possible. Okay, working groups, some rules on training. I just went through that. So I'm going to leave you with this and then see you again tomorrow morning as we kind of tie ourselves to our work environment and getting the most out of it and contributing and participating the most into it. We start with being aware of how we're approaching it and how we show up. And that helps us fulfill character and purpose and create reliable behavior and consistent reactions. It also helps us minimize overreactions. And then you have the opportunity to create change instead of fear it, get angry about it, and wallow in the negativity of it. So if you tie yourself to that work environment, then you sometimes become the glue in pulling it all together. And you know, this is a circle here. It's not one and done. It's an ongoing thing, and morale is something that we want to work on every day and getting ourselves ready every day. So I'm going to pause, and I think I'm going to leave up my information in case you guys didn't write it down from the first slide, and send me any questions. And then now I have 4 handouts instead of 3, so I got to send more stuff to the other Maureens in my world. And Matthew, I have no idea where to find questions in the chat room, because I minimized it.
Okay. If anybody has questions, you can start putting them out. Now, we have had a lot of requests for handouts, and we've got those recorded in chat, and our Maureen will work on getting that to you for those.
Okay.
If anybody has questions, please put them in the chat there.
Super. So I'll hang here and answer questions, and maybe what I'll do is poke around the button and find the chat, and that might even help me see, especially for tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning we talk about you. So if I hit any buttons on how do I get good rest, you should come back tomorrow morning. It's pretty interesting how you can take care of yourself in the world of good rest.
Mo, if you'll go down to the bottom toolbar
Yeah.
and you'll see where it says chat. If you'll click on that, you should be able to draw up the chat window.
Hey, I did. My toolbar's at the top, and I found a button called chat. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, handouts. I would like handouts, more handouts, and more
Yeah.
handouts. Hey, also the handouts can be facilitated. So if you get a handout and you're like, dude, I don't remember how to use this handout, just let me know. I can send you some directions. And sometimes we can spend 10 minutes on the phone. I can tell you the do's and don'ts. As a matter of fact, if we